In the question of awareness and being, we have to look into the notion of a being. This point, there are all kinds of approaches towards notion of a being. Being good, being bad, being sensible, being crazy, beatitude. All kinds of notions of being. But when we talk about awareness and being, it is unconditional being. You just be without any conditions of being what or whatever may be. Unconditional way of being. That seems to play a very important part in the question of being. Unconditional being. Which is a state of mind which involved with a certain sense of attitude. But you might say, isn't that a conditional mind? That if you involve attitudes, shouldn't we say that is also attitude? So therefore we couldn't find an unconditional being. True. Even unconditional being requires attitude. In order to develop unconditional level, we have to develop some condition as to that we could develop unconditionality. We cannot begin perfectly at the beginning. Otherwise it ceases to become beginning, it will become the end. That achievement. So reason why we are referring whole this process is the beginner's level, is the level of clumsiness and the level of messiness, unstructured, confused, and so forth. The level of confusion, the messiness, untidiness, and constant dichotomy. And a constant reference point. But at least that we are approaching our directions towards unconditional being. Gazing at the Star of Bethlehem, in the horizon, which is a far away, far, far away, but there is still hope of a spark of luminosity is there, and the land may be dark, sky may be gray, black, it might be chilly, cold, uncomfortable, tired, restless, but nevertheless, the Star of Bethlehem is over there. Human beings hope. The final hope that human beings could ever be hopeful is enlightenment. The Star of Bethlehem in the horizon. And skillful means that are developed by the Buddhas and Tathagatas throughout the ages, and the great teachers have developed. And their approach is that enlightenment is like a carrot in front of a donkey. There's a carrot in thousands of miles away shining, and you have to walk and walk and walk and go and get it. Donkey doesn't have the carrot at the time, at this point at the beginner's level, but we had to be inspired that a far gone inspiration, something's taking place right over there at the horizon, and big space and huge open desert landscape. Coming back to the question, apart from the poetry, the question is, we need hope. Powerful hope of attaining enlightenment in this lifetime. That hope is based on the notion of relating with the constant chatter that goes in our mind, ups and downs of all kinds of emotional disturbances that we experience, constant ongoing process that takes place within our state of being. We need a reference point to that. Hope is categorized into two types of situations. That hope for the aspiration is necessary. That hope of gaining one's power is another thing. So as far as the hope of aspiration is concerned, that students must need to relate with a spiritual friend, Kalyana Mitra, Gevi Shinyen. Spiritual friend is very important. That you cannot start even right at the beginning of the beginning without practicing, without learning, relating with a person who had done that particular journey, took that particular journey, had achieved that particular results, and enlightened. And it is necessary to have that kind of reference point, necessary to have a lineage holder, craftsman. You have to have informations. You have to gather the information from the handicrafts, how the knowledge is being passed on, and you have to relate with somebody who knows how to put the Dharma into a visible world rather than myth. That spiritual friend, Kalyana Mitra, is a person who avoids speculative attitude towards the teaching or mythical, but brings about in reality. He done it, you can do it. Possible and visible, obvious. It is necessary to have that kind of relationship, and the relationship could begin from purely the fame of a certain spiritual friend or guru, for that matter, who had reputed to have power over others. That confusion doesn't exist when you meet a certain guru. You could follow by faith, or else you get personal experience that meeting such a person is very powerful, and you actually experienced the presence of such a person, spiritual friend. You have experienced your own basic sanity, a sense of solidness, a sense of reality is actually taking place at that level. So the choice is true, that either one should become blind, faith-like person, just believes and worships without logic, or else that person who doesn't believe, extremely skeptical, highly opinionated, full of one's own philosophies of all kinds, could still meet a certain spiritual friend in an eye-level situation, explore how he is, why he is, what level of spiritual operation that he is performing. That doesn't mean to say that spiritual friend should be levitating 3 inches above your level, or constantly emanating sparks of enlightenment in the form of firework. Personal relationship is very important. Traditionally, the guru is referred as like the sun shining upon the earth, that every aspect of this earth is every petal of a flower, every leaf, every grass that grows is related to the sun, according to the 4 seasons. That each flower on this earth has a personal relationship to the sun. Although the sun does not particularly personally direct its attention to bias level, actually shine more to the rose bush opposed to poppy or anything like that. But depends on how receptive the whole process is, that much openness takes place at that level. So personal openness is very important, rather than purely by living on faith. Faith, blind or intelligent. Open faith could be intelligent, but willing to include one's own confusion and one's own understanding at the same time. And blind faith is purely going by at the level of facts and figures. Quick results. Fame, reputation, and so forth. It is saying the same thing, that you should read this book because this book is the bestseller, and 5 million copies being sold. Therefore, it must be good. It is possible that 5 million stupid people bought it and read it and sold. And that's not the reference point. So it is very much necessary to follow on the spiritual path, to have a sense of personal relationship with the teacher, Kalyana Mitra, Gevishinyin, is very important and necessary. The Gevishinyin, or spiritual friend, presents you with the Star of Bethlehem. Takes you out into your cozy home, and maybe briskly cold, biting cold, and shall we put our coat on? Let's just walk out and take a look. What's happening in the universe? And cold winter night, that your spiritual friend decided to take you out on a walk. Put our boots. Don't punish yourself. Coat, warm coat. If you like, take a cigar along with you. Now let us take a walk. Step out. Our mud house or plastic house or whatever we are living in. And we walk around. At the beginning, the caution is that watch doorstep when you go to get out. It's rather dark outside. Your eye had to be adjusted to the darkness outside and the light inside. Just let's step out. Be careful your step. And don't trot on the dog shit. Just outside. Very practical. Very careful. Walk out. Take a walk. In the cold winter night, you could hear every grass stalk is crumbling under your feet with the juice on them. And once we have made a relationship with our ground, your visual sight is adjusted to that kind of night light. Maybe it is new moon day without any moon, and the stars are very bright. Occasional clouds hanging in the corners of the horizon, but there is the star of Bethlehem. It's shining, shivering because of the cold weather. Spiritual friend's role is to take you out to walk, look at the star of Bethlehem. Take a look. And we are going to go out there. Our trip begins tomorrow. Maybe we should walk out there. Drive out there. Fly, take a train to the star, whatever. That the person then get a personal experience which is mutual to himself and the spiritual friend at the same time. So you have a goal, idea that you want to get into the star of Bethlehem. Enlightenment is real experience at that point. No myth. It's not optical illusion at all. There is star of Bethlehem out there, shining. And it is no conmanship at all. It's a real experience. Very real. So enlightenment becomes very real. And according to the Zen tradition, it is known as the Satori experience, the meeting of the two minds. Whatever. That a person is shown a certain way how to handle himself, herself, whatever. Emotions, disciplines of all kinds. But the point is to make enlightenment real rather than pure myth. It might work. Let's take a chance. It doesn't somehow become practical enough. We've been taking a chance for a long, long time. Since we're involved in the circle of samsara, we thought we were going to be happy one day by striving, by speeding, by trying to grasp, by trying to create a comfortable nest. We have all kinds of guesswork that we have done, and we've been hoping still. We never give up the hope, and somehow that actually didn't work. And it wasn't a brilliant scheme, shall we say. It's rather a dumb and stupid one, in fact. We can't blame the historians, or the philosophers, or the scientists, particularly at all, the creator of this universe, particularly. We cannot blame ourselves even. It happened by accident, by karmic chain reactions. That let us not take a vengeful attitude to anybody. My mother messed my life, my father messed up my life. Those blames and pathetic gestures are becoming old hat and unreasonable. So, back to square one. Meet a spiritual friend who shows you the Star of Bethlehem, enlightenment, and then start the journey immediately. The question of a being is that having had a mutual experience with your spiritual friend and yourself together, that there is something taking place. That's the question of a being. Whether that question of being is created artificially or else very naturally, organically, or whatever, it doesn't really matter. It is experience already. It is experience in any case. Let us not question the validity of metaphysical point of view, philosophically, scientifically, domestically. We don't try to make ourselves show that we are signing our name on the dotted line in insurance policy, particularly. And something more than that is, this is not a business transaction. It is a personal experience. A mother who bore a child, if child is starving, you cannot blame your child, your infant, that it is because you didn't bring any money along with you as you were born. That would be absurd. We are starving because you didn't bring any money along with you. It's a karmic situation that takes place throughout the whole thing, that we are confused utterly. As far as we know, we are confused. Even we don't know even that sometimes, but we are confused in any case. Trying to find who to blame our confusion is a further act of confusion. That takes us away from practice, actual discipline of meditative training. Takes us away from it. So the question boils down, nobody fucked up our life, really, actually, properly speaking. The only thing that fucked up our life is because we feel somebody did pull trick on us, or you pull trick on yourself. And as a matter of fact, there's not even you exist. You don't exist at all. So nobody's pulling trick on anybody. Even you don't exist. You are just myth. Mythical truth. Within that understanding of the mythical truth, that we practice meditation, we sit at the level of myth of freedom. It might be a myth. The Star of Bethlehem may be a myth, but we have seen it, we have experienced it. So need enormous discipline, committing oneself to a spiritual friend and committing oneself because of a spiritual friend to oneself at the same time. And sitting practice provides enormous help. You can't even begin to call yourself a follower of Buddha Dharma if there's no basic training of a mind is involved. In order to perceive Buddha and Dharma, one has to have a devotion. In order to have a devotion, one has to do training to develop devotion, which may be very clumsy at the beginning, but it is necessary. So starting from the Hinayana practice of discipline, Satipatthana and Vipassana practice is extremely important and very powerful and absolutely necessary, provided if you want to follow the path properly, thoroughly and completely. Enlightenment is very complete, total. There's no such thing as a fake enlightenment. It's real experience. It's real life. We could have discussions on that if you like to ask any questions.
You said that even we don't exist.
Even what?
That even we don't exist, that we're a myth. Is the Enlightenment also a myth?
Not we. You. Or I. Not we. We don't exist. You don't exist. I don't exist.
Does the Enlightenment exist?
Not even enlightenment exists.
Does devotion exist?
I beg your pardon?
The devotion exists.
Devotion is knowing that you don't exist. It's the information that someone tells you you don't exist. And you experience that's true, I don't exist. That's the act of devotion. Devotion is language, media, to communicate that message. A devotion act is like a mailman who brings your mail.
Talk about the personal experience with the teacher, enlightenment experience. But the way I understand what you said about enlightenment is that it's not an experience. So what's happening at that moment? It's really enlightenment or still an experience? There's still somebody there experiencing something.
Enlightenment is no longer regarded as experience, because experience is like a blotting paper which absorbs the ink. That is, blotting paper is having a good experience by absorbing the ink, which requires two entities to work together. But in this case, it is not experience from that point of view. It is a total. The notion of razor blade cutting itself.
If it was total at that moment, why would it end? In other words,
It doesn't end.
comes and goes.
It doesn't end. That's the whole point.
You have to
Enlightenment
find
experience is eternal. It doesn't end. I mean, that's the whole point of liberation. Once you're liberated, it is forever.
So the experience with your spiritual friend is just what is it? Just a glimpse of.
It's a glimpse of that freedom.
And if you went to see your spiritual friend and wanted to surrender your ego to him, you didn't have a glimpse. Is that because
you're still wrapped up in the notion of freedom?
Still what?
Wrapped up in the notion of freedom. All things seem to be very simple from that level.
It doesn't really begin either, right?
What do you mean by that?
Like the experience, since it's not experience, I mean, you say talking like as if it doesn't end, it's because it doesn't begin.
Well, that in itself is the beginning. Because it doesn't end, it doesn't begin, and it is.
If it does not exist, why bother?
I beg your pardon?
If I do not exist and enlightenment does not exist, then why bother trying to, I don't have the right words, why bother?
Well, that is the
Why begin?
$60 question. Has gone down. Everybody's asking that. Why bother? But in order to find why bother, you have to find why not. That hasn't been solved. That problem hasn't been solved. As long as the 12 nidana exist, the 12 chain reactions of karmic cycle exist.
In some of the literature that I've read, out of Tibetan translation, one phrase that really stuck in my mind was, the attainment of human birth is a mighty opportunity that is not to be frittered away.
Not to be what?
Frittered away.
Not to be frittered away.
Mm-hmm.
Filled away. Any comment on that?
What did you say? What do you think about that?
Yeah, in the light of what has just been said.
Which one?
About like why
Non-existence?
In terms of why bother.
Just would like you to comment.
Why bother? I see. Well, it's very simple. That this life is very valuable. Human birth is very important. That you have a chance to practice, a chance to learn the truth, and still the question of why bother is cropping back again and again. That is actually the path is consist of. Who am I? What am I? What is this? What isn't this? All the time until enlightenment is actually achieved. The question has never been answered, why bother? That becomes one of the mantras of the path, why bother? Which goes on all the time.
You said that enlightenment is a real experience, and you also said that enlightenment doesn't exist.
Because it doesn't exist, therefore it's real. When something exists personally, experientially, conditionally, that is become a mirage and fake. And a lot of people might find experience that you have in a Disneyland is more real than having experience in your city life. The mirage seems to be more real.
Yeah, it's like a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
You think the mirror is real. Right.
You are real in the mirror.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah.
But it's still the mirror's interpretation of you. And therefore, it doesn't exist.
So when you say
But
enlightenment,
non-existence is the most valid of all. It's the highest existence, is the non-existence.
so enlightenment as a real experience is just a mirror?
More than mirror. Super mirror. That's why in the traditional and tantric language, it is called the mirror-like wisdom, a real experience of non-existence, cutting through all kinds of conceptualizations and everything, experience of Vajra-like samadhi.
What does making friends with yourself mean?
That you are very rich, resourceful, and there are all kinds of working bases that exist in you. That you don't have to reform yourself or abandon yourself, but work with yourself. Your passion, aggression, ignorance, everything is workable, is part of the path.
Yourself, selves, oneself.
There's no self.
There's no self. So you're working with thought processes.
There's no thought. There is. Thoughts are interpretations of what is. Spokesman of non-existence, subject. The clouds exist because sky exists. Sky exists because there's light, which shows us blue sky. But once we get out of the outer space, you don't even see blue sky, you don't even see clouds anymore.
But there still is blotting paper and ink and clouds and blue sky.
In the form of transitoriness, yes.
Only in the form of transitoriness?
Yeah.
I mean, then how does that relate to the experience of oneness and duality in Tantra, in Vajrayana?
We haven't talked about that today yet. We have to extend our seminar for another 3 months.
Could you say something about livelihood and effort as... Could you say something about livelihood and effort as foundations of mindfulness?
Well, effort and livelihood are expression of our mental activities that happens all the time.
Was that in relation to sitting practice?
As well as everyday life practice, meditation and action as well. That, in other words, any raw material there might be, is constantly workable, and that is the object of trotting on the spiritual path, following the Dharma. You can't follow Dharma if you don't have any fuels to work with, any food to nourish your journey. That those things goes on in your life is the food for your journey, nourishment, which makes you walk on the spiritual path.
How does fascination, does it lead to inspiration and then to enlightenment? Or are they related?
Yeah, fascination, starting point, and then inspiration, so forth.
there's no self. How then do we really make friends with ourselves?
Because of that. Since there's no self, therefore there's no threat. You are not threatened by anything because you don't exist. Therefore, the world is a bank of compassion.
So anything is alright?
Well, shall we say?
You talk about, you said hope is very necessary. But
What is necessary?
you said hope is very necessary, but the more hope I have, the less I'm able to breathe. You know, it's like if I have a lot of hope, I can't even move because I'm so afraid I won't. You know, I'm so concentrated on getting something, and it seems only when I give up hope just for a minute that I have any choice or any room. And yet you say hope is very...
Well, giving up hope is also activities of hope, of final encouragement, that you are encouraged to take that particular path of hopelessness. It's more of encouragement.
It comes out of it, you mean?
Concerns the question of the koan, what is the sound of one hand clapping? And I've heard, given as an answer, the sound of one hand clapping is the sound of one hand clapping. And I just wonder if that's an example of spiritual materialism, that particular answer, or if there is indeed an answer to that koan.
Well, if you try to give any answers, obviously, that's going to be a nature of spiritual materialism. The purpose of a koan is not to find out, answer for it, but experience the message. And the sound of one-handed clap is, I suppose,
Does energy exist or love exist if self does not exist?
selflessness.
Does energy exist or love if there is no ego or self, or is that just a myth?
I hope so. Better to exist. But maybe it doesn't exist, but it is. Love is, energy is, rather than exist. That kind of different, same level. And if you don't exist, you are. If energy doesn't exist, energy is. If love doesn't exist, love is.
You talk about something being self-existing, is that?
No, not even self-existing, not at all. That is kind of Yogacharan philosophy. But the level what we are talking about is a Madhyamaka tradition with the tinge of Tantra in it, which talks about isness is the energy, and love, whatever.
How does one work?
I beg your pardon?
How does one work?
How does one work? Work what?
On oneself.
One just begin at the beginning. I mean, it's very simple, you know. There's no how. When you ask how you should do things, it's like trying to buy gloves, pair of gloves, so you don't have to touch, you don't have to strain your hand. Or buying a pair of pliers is a question of how. But one doesn't even think about how, but one just do it.
If there's no self, if there's no enlightenment, if there's no thought, and there are no memories, then how is it that you're able to tell us what you've experienced and what you know?
Because of those. Seriously. Because things are. In fact, actually, it might be more correct dharmically to say things is. It's not quite grammatic, but things is. There's enormous clarity out of non-existence.
What perceives that non-existence if there's
By itself.
by itself? Thank you.
Pleasure.
I really don't want a 3-month seminar, but since Friday, I've continued to have the sense, or it came to me, and it's still with me, that it seems that all the 3 yanas are happening simultaneously. And so then how does one, does one have to isolate the Hinayana path and goal from the Mahayana and the Tantrayana in order to reach the goal of the Hinayana?
Well, I think it would be safer, much more safer, to start on the Hinayana level at the beginning, because we need a lot of training. That a lot of students have start on what's called a path of accumulation, which is a level of ordinary person, sentient being, not even being bodhisattvas. And from that level, just learn how to be ordinary person plays an important part of the first path. Chogyam, path of accumulation, is the starting point. So one has to start with the one thing at a time. It's like a question of you have to chew before you swallow, but you have to chew properly. If you chew properly or efficiently, probably you chew and swallow at the same time. But that depends on your experience.
Is it that in some way that is in that being where one starts, and in that being one's focus, the rest may be happening anyhow.
Anyhow,
but
yes.
That is not one's
There
concern.
is a Star of Bethlehem anyway. There is enlightenment. It actually does exist, and people have done so. And it is real. You could experience it. Maybe we should close our seminar. You would like to ask any?
Shamatha practice, is there any stage in which there are instructions for particular attention to the surface of the eyeball?
It's a question of being there, rather than categorized as what they may be, what they are. It's just a question of being, simply being. Thank you.
What is the distinction between the hopelessness that you described in the Naropa seminar last Christmas? What is the distinction between the hopelessness that you described in the Naropa seminar at Christmas and the hope that you talk about now?
Same. Well, friends, we should close our seminar. I have to go out to New Jersey and perform a wedding at a Jewish country club. Anyhow, I would like to encourage you that it is extremely necessary and worthwhile thinking very seriously if you are interested in trotting on the practice of meditation path, that before you learn any gimmicks, you have to get yourself together. And the notion of renunciation and the notion of desolateness and aloneness and loneliness is very all-pervading, but at the same time, you cannot develop a sense of renunciation, sense of a spiritual path, without that notion of openness. Crisp, clear winter morning air cannot develop. So, from that point of view, meditation is not regarded as pleasurable or particularly painful, but by no means it is regarded as a magical trick that will give you instant enlightenment or instant bliss, whatever. But it is very manual experience, very personal experience. One had to explore, one had to sit and discipline oneself constantly all the time, which occupies 24 hours of one's lifetime. So, no doubt that I don't have to mention, but I still would like to, is that I have written a book called Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, which is at the moment out of print, but it should be out, according to my publisher, pretty soon in the next few days. And it is worthwhile getting that book, that it is kind of extended seminar that what we discussed and a lot of things written about that, particularly suited for American audience, American world. And it is worthwhile reading and looking into that. And also there is another very powerful book, is the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa, translated by C.C. Chang, which is a very powerful and very important book to read. And there is also late Suzuki Roshi from Zen Center, San Francisco, has written a book, if you don't know, called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, which is a very powerful book, very direct, very domesticated, and very personal experience, and a fatherly voice of some kind, which is very powerful and important. And of course, my other book called Meditation Action, which I'm sure everybody must know by this point, as also at the same level as Zen Mind and Beginner's Mind, is trying to communicate very simple ideas to people of spiritual path. And if you're interested in further in the practice of Vipassana, Shamatha, Satipatthana techniques, there is a book called Heart of a Buddhist Meditation, written by Jnana Punika Thera, and I think it's published by Wises in paperback. It is valuable and very necessary to go through those readings to establish basic fundamentals of real hard-working and real definite effort that people in the past have put into their practice of discipline. And they have worked very hard for you people, ourselves. And we should appreciate those people who work hard on their discipline to transmit energy and wisdom to us. And it is worthwhile admiring their hard-working disciplines they have gone through. Thank you.